Hey everybody, welcome to Java. In this video, I'm going to describe how to use Eclipse, which is the software that you'll use to do most of your programming over the next semester and a half, and also how to integrate Eclipse with GitHub, which will allow you to access your code at home or anywhere else and have a safe backup in case something happens. First, I'll start with Eclipse and then I'll get to the GitHub stuff. To get to Eclipse, you can go to the shortcut on your desktop, which should say something like Eclipse Java or Eclipse Neon Java, or you can go down to the Start menu in the lower left-hand corner and type Neon, and it should be there as well. The first time you run it, it's going to look a little bit different than it does the rest of the times that you run it. One of the things it should do is prompt you for a workspace. Now, last year I would have told you to use the Y drive, but that can actually be a little bit slower, and sometimes the servers are down or whatever. So this year, because you're using GitHub, you can just use the default, which is going to be C users and then your name and then workspace neon or something. So you can check mark this, use this as the default, and do not ask again because you'll just use the same thing over and over. Click OK. Now, also, the first time you run Eclipse, what's going to happen is it's going to give you kind of a different screen where it'll ask you what you want to do. It'll give you, I think, a list of 8 or 10 options or something like that. But the option that you want is create a new Java project. In the future, when you open Eclipse, it'll open to your old project. And if you want to create a new one, you'll have to go up here to File, New Java project. But for right now, because it's the first time, you can just click Create a Java project to get started. I'm going to name my first Java project Test Project. You'll notice that I made the first character of each word I typed upper case. That's called camel case, and it's kind of a convention. It's something that people do when they're programming in Java. So if I were to type more words, I would capitalize the first letter of every word, no spaces. Anyhow, just test project works just fine. For this particular screen, I don't need to do anything else. I can just click finish. And what you'll see in a minute or so is that I've got a screen that has test project over here in the corner and nothing over here. Inside of test project, I click the little arrow here and it shows me I've got a source folder and something called JRE system library that's always going to be there, but you really don't have to worry about. If you had other projects going on, you would have a list of them running all the way down here, but I only have this one project. As I said, I can show you what that looks like by going to File, New Java Project, and I'll call this one. I think typically you'll want to name your project something that corresponds with what you're making. So for instance, your first assignment is Challenge Set 0, so I'm going to call it Challenge Set 0, and then click Finish. And now I've got my second project there. Anyhow, once you're in Eclipse and once you've got your project set up, you'll need to create something called a class. Now, I'll explain in more detail what a class is later on, but for right now, all you really need to know is that most of your projects at the beginning are going to have one single class. So for each new project you create, you'll need to create a new project in Eclipse and then a new class. And the class also is going to start with a capital letter in the same way. So I can call this test class. I could really call it anything. You just make sure that it's capitalized. If I wanted to, I could just call it class or something. But I'll call it test class. And the one thing that you'll want to do for each of these at first when you only have a single class is you are going to check mark that you want to create this public static void main. There's a reason for that, but I think it's probably best if I cover that later. So you'll click Finish, and then you see that inside of this source folder here, inside of the default package, I have testclass.java. This is where all the code for your programs is going to go. So there are a few other features in Eclipse that I want to point out. Basically just stuff that's going to make your life easier. You're not necessarily going to understand all of it at first, but if I tell you about it here, at least when I talk about it later, hopefully it'll make sense. This is your main method. This is where things start. I am going to do a couple of things that, are going to seem a little weird to you right now, but don't worry about it. Notice I type this thing and there's a little red X here. Every time you make a mistake, something that just doesn't work, you'll see a red X like that and a little red kind of underlined squiggle. If you put your mouse over the red X or over the underlined squiggle, you'll see what Eclipse thinks is wrong. Here it says syntax error, insert a semicolon to complete block statements. So what that tells you is that here, next to the red squiggle, it wants a semicolon. So if I put it there, hey look, your problem disappeared. That makes it a whole lot easier than like Python to figure out what your problem is and where you need to fix it. I'm going to create something called a constructor. Don't worry about that. And so that I can show you another feature of Eclipse. And we're going to create a method. A method is like a function. It's like a small little block of code that kind of operates as its own program within your program. I'm going to create a method called method that I'm going to call here, and then I'll say, now if I put my mouse over this underlined thing, it says the method is undefined. So I could say, oh, why don't I create my method? And look, it actually created the method for me. So if you wanted to create the method all on your own, which you probably get used to doing, you just go like public static void method and then do it. But it'll actually do it for you, which is pretty cool. The last bit I want to show you is, let's say I want to use a feature that isn't automatically included in my program. You're going to be using something called a scanner. And I'm going to say scanner, my scanner equals new scanner. One thing I want to point out, this my scanner here is a variable, and the name method is a function. Both of those start with lowercase letters, but the second word in here has an uppercase S. It's really important that the first letter of functions and methods and variables start with a lowercase letter, and it's also equally important that any subsequent words start with an uppercase letter. Anyhow, this underline here, scanner, well, it says it cannot be resolved to a type, so it tries to suggest fixes, and one of the fixes is to import scanner. So if there's a problem, you just kind of put your mouse over it and say, well, maybe this will work. Let's give it a try. Typically, I'm actually going to tell you most of what you need to know to be able to solve these problems, but if you forget, you can always put your mouse over that. And lastly, there's something that you guys are going to be doing a lot of, and that is printing stuff out to the console. In Python, it was really easy. You would just type print and, hello, and it would print stuff out. Pretty easy. Unfortunately, Java is not so easy in that respect. So what you have to do is type system.out.println and then hello. That is an awful lot of stuff to do just to put a line on the screen. So there's a shortcut in Eclipse that kind of helps you get past that. If you type sysout like this and hit Control and the space key at the same time, it'll automatically type the rest of that stuff out, including the parentheses, and then you can type your word and put it in quotes and you're done. Super, super, super easy. It saves you time. If you guys remember for loops from Python, it's kind of the same thing. You type for and hit Control and the space bar, and just click on the first one here, and that'll set the for loop up mostly the way you need to make it. So I'll remind you of this all down the road. I just kind of want to expose you to it now. Anyway, let's get rid of all this junk that I just created and show you how to integrate Eclipse with GitHub. So the first thing you'll need to do is create your new project, which I've done. And then I'm going to right-click the project, go down to Team, and Share Project. This should be the first thing you do on any new assignment after you create the project. Now, you should checkmark Use or Create Repository in Parent Folder, like this. Then you click on the name of the project right here, and click Create Repository, and then Finish. But that is certainly not all. After you do that, you right-click the name of the project again. You go to Team, and this time you go to pull. What this is going to do is it's going to pull the code that already exists from GitHub, and it'll set you up to be able to sync with GitHub later on. Now the remote name doesn't matter so much. You can leave it as origin. The URI here you're going to get from GitHub. The way that you get that URI is for each assignment, I've created a link that's going to link you to the GitHub assignment. So you'll need to sign up for a GitHub account if you don't already have one, then sign into your GitHub account if you've not signed in, and then you click the link. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to accept the Java, the assignment in GitHub, and it will give you a link to it. So you click this here, and this is my link to the project. So I will copy this address and go back here and paste it. Occasionally I've seen some junk after my username. If that's there, just delete it. Make sure that your username is kind of the last thing in there. When you paste this one line in, these two lines automatically get generated for you. And the last thing you need to do is put your username and password in here. You can also check mark save secure or store in secure store. What that'll let you do is make it so you don't have to keep entering your password over and over again. If you do that, the first time you do it, it's going to ask you for a password for your secure store. Make sure you use a password that you're going to remember. Probably the same one that you used for GitHub would be a good one. So I'm going to click next. And then on this page, it's more or less the same thing. This remote thing is going to be empty. You have to click new remote. You'll come in here. All this stuff is probably pre-populated. If for some reason it's not, if it's all empty, it's the same thing as last time. You paste that in there. You click finish, and you click finish. And at the end of all that, what you'll see is that any files that are in that GitHub project that I've placed there for you are going to be there. For your very first project, all you should see, in addition to whatever is there to start with, is this README here. If I double click this README, it shows me what I placed there for you, and you'll see, oh yeah, you're supposed to answer these questions like your name. So I'm just going to type my name and show you how you submit stuff in GitHub. Basically, what you do is once you are done, you go to, you right-click your project name, you go to Team, and then you go to Add to Index. Then, after you add to the index, you right-click the project name. Oh, wait, sorry, I forgot to save. You have to save before you add stuff to the index, or else it's not actually there. Add to index, go right-click, go to Team, and up here at the top there is this thing that says Commit. Now, what it wants you to do is you have to type a commit message in here. See, if I click this button, it's going to say, you must enter a commit message. Okay, that makes sense. So the message is supposed to be what you've done. So for me, I would say I entered my name in the README, and I click commit and push. And, oh, I guess I didn't save part of it, so I'll say yes, I'll save changes. Do I want to cancel the commit so I can first handle it? This is what happens when you don't save all your work. So I have to go back here and do it over, which is lame. Team, add to index, right-click, team, commit, and then commit and push. And this should just be all the default. All I have to do is hit next and finish. And it says, okay, it's been pushed. So if I look at the website, what I'll see is now I've got all this new stuff, and the change that I made in the README is there, which means that the teacher, me, I can take a look at what you did. The last thing I'm going to show you before we go is, let's say that you made a bunch of changes to your code since your last commit and they totally messed up your program. And for whatever reason you can't undo it. Well, what you can do is you can view your history. The way that you do that is you select the file that you want to go back to. You right click and you go to Team and you show local history. And you'll see here that I've got only 2 different revisions. The first one I pulled and the most recent one. If I look at the old one, if I double click it, you'll see that it has the file without the changes that I made. So if I wanted to, I could get the contents. I can right click this old version, get the contents of it, and it'll overwrite my current version with the old version, which means that I can actually go back in time to code that worked if I wanted to, which might really come in handy for some of you. Anyway, I've talked with you enough about this. Your first assignment is to edit this README here, enter all of your information, and check it and commit it to your GitHub repository so that I can look it over and make sure that you can use GitHub. Of course, as always, ask me if you have any questions. Best of luck.